Please welcome entrepreneur, best-selling author, and speaker, Seth Godin.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I want to talk about the meetings industry, so I'm in the right place for that. But before I do, I have to talk about golf. Golf, I hope we can agree, is the worst spectator sport ever invented. Nothing good ever happens, and if something good happens, you have to do this measly, quiet, polite applause. So just humor me. Give for me the worst, measliest golf applause you can muster, please. Thank you. Can you double it? Double it again. And one more time. Beautiful. Thank you. So I think that's part of what you do for a living, is find small little threads of interest or passion, connect them, amplify them, double them down. But in this moment, this post-COVID, work from home, remote, what's happening next moment, I think it pays to spend a few minutes talking about what it is to be in an industry, what this industry is about, and where it might be going. So I'm not going to talk for very long, and then Rafat and I are going to have a conversation. But I want to start with this. Industries tend to develop to be efficient and convenient. You go to a certain location, or you use a certain vendor, or you engage with others in the industry because you know exactly how to do what you did yesterday, but you need to do it a little bit easier and a little bit cheaper. And that makes a lot of sense until the world changes. So let's ask the first question, which we're not going to answer yet, which is, what are meetings for? Because it's not what it used to be. But first, I'll ask an easier question. What are farmers markets for? Because the farmers market is an inconvenient, inefficient way to get food. It used to be the only way to get food. That 100 years ago, or in many parts of the world today, the only way you're going to feed your family this week is if you go to the farmer's market and buy the things you need from the mercado and bring them home. But to go to the farmer's market in my town, I have to pass 2 supermarkets. And so the farmers markets are doing great. The Union Square Farmers Market is a thrill, but it doesn't exist to do what it used to do. It does something different. I've spent my career on the fringes of the book publishing industry. For 500 years, the book publishing industry was about one thing: efficiently chop down trees, turn them into a vessel for ideas, bring those ideas to people through an independent bookstore so they will buy them and take them home. Take any book in your library, pull it out, and you'll realize on the back there is no 800 number or website. They don't want to hear from readers. They exist to serve bookstores who sell paper. And we all saw what happened in the last 10 years. All of that changed, and the book industry hasn't figured out what it's for. And so even though more books are being sold to more people than ever before, the industry is freaking out because they don't know what to do. I was at Yahoo in 1999. We had the chance to buy Google for $10 million. I was not in the room when they said no. And instead, they decided to spend the money to improve Yahoo Kids. Western Union had the chance to buy AT&T a long time ago, and instead they decided to make better telegrams. So here we are in this moment when the purpose of meetings, trade shows, events, has been transformed. When I would go to ABA or something that Reed would run, it was the only chance all year to see people, to encounter the information, to learn what I needed to learn. Now, less happens there than if I just sat at home and typed as fast as I could. It's for a different purpose. But if the industry mindset sticks around too much, we miss it. So I worked with the people at ABA off and on, going to conferences and stuff. And then TED showed up. I spoke at the first TED that Chris Anderson ran. I want you to think for a second about the best conference you ever went to, the best meeting or event you were ever part of. What made it the best one? So Janis Joplin performed at Monterey. It changed her life and the life of the people who were there. If you were at the Newport Festival, when Arlo Guthrie played, the first time he played Alice's Restaurant, there were 15 people. And then a few hours later, they had him play it again to 40 people, and then a few hours later, until finally he keynoted the whole thing. That day was pretty amazing, whether you were in the audience or whether you were Arlo. AOL had a conference years ago for its vendors. They were my biggest customer. And I needed to get on Steve Case's radar, the CEO. And they had a 6 a.m. run. I don't run, but I went. And I still remember a mile later, finally having been able to just say hi to Steve, lying in a ditch by the side of the road because something changed. As a speaker, I've been to plenty of events. One of the TEDs where I spoke, I was scheduled to do a 3-minute talk. I spent 6 months getting the talk ready, and it was the first time they were in Vancouver, and the slides didn't work the way they were supposed to. And I realized my presentation, which had 140 slides in 3 minutes, wasn't going to work very well because the clicker. So I only had 24 hours left to come up with a new presentation. And running around Vancouver and buying a used clarinet and writing, I remember that because the purpose was achieved. Change happened. But if you want to make change happen, you have no choice but to embrace the fact that you're also creating tension. You cannot have change without tension. If I want to shoot a rubber band across the room, I have to pull it backwards before I let it go. You are in the business going forward not of being convenient and inexpensive and reliable, because lots of people can do that now and we'd rather just stay home. You are in the business of creating tension. And if your venue or your city or your firm gets a reputation for effectively and efficiently, usefully, regularly creating tension that leads to change, you're no longer going to have trouble selling seats, marketing your events, getting people to want to come. There's going to be a waiting list. So years and years ago, when I started giving talks about email marketing, I would get up there and I would explain the number one thing you can do to make your marketing work better is to make better products. And people didn't want to hear that. They said, yeah, but what time of day should we tweet so we get more responses? But that's not the hard work. The hard work is to lean back again, push back against the client, push back with the people you're working with and say, you know what? The 10 top was invented by caterers to make it easier to feed a meal. It wasn't invented by people who want there to be actual interaction at lunch. We're not going to have 10 tops because that's not going to change anybody. It's just going to let people survive the mealtime without any social stress. But we're here to make stress happen. Filling a gym with couches doesn't work. You want to fill it with things that people are going to pay to interact with. And so the opportunity that we have, and it is an opportunity, is not to fight to maintain the status quo. It's to decide how we're going to redefine it. So my new book's coming out in about 6 weeks about strategy. And there are a couple ideas from it that I want to share. The first one is this. Big problems demand small solutions. That it is very tempting to say, this thing has to be fixed. We need a decree, we need a permit, and it has to be done by tomorrow. But that's not how big problems got here. Big problems got here slowly over time. And we're going to address them bit by bit, incrementally. So if you're working with a company that's got a remote workforce of 1,000 and they're bringing them together for 3 days once a year, they have a big problem, which is they went thanks to COVID, fairly suddenly from all these people in a room every single day, wearing the same clothes, going to the same dry cleaners, eating lunch together every day, to seeing each other for 3 days a year. And if you're sitting there just taking notes saying, okay, well, we'll do this thing with the round tables and we'll have a couple speakers and then there'll be some networking time. And I loved your answers to these questions. You've completely missed the point. Right? No one is going to be changed by those 3 days. The check will clear, but they're not going to be eager to come back to you next year because no one will talk about 2 months later what happened. This is our opportunity. Don't waste the caviar, the sushi, the good part, right? That we are leaving it to be an accident, that you'll bump into someone in the hall. That's the point. So how do we create that environment? What happens if we imagine that the conference doesn't last 72 hours? It's just 72 hours in person. What happens if a month before you get a dossier of the 12 people you need to meet when you are there? What happens when it's not just please download our app? There's a good reason to stay in it. That when I was sitting with my friend at Reed talking about ABA 15 years ago, I said, why does ABA only last 3 days? Why doesn't it last 365 days? And 3 of those days are the days we come together. Who decided that the boundaries of your work involve a hotel? Your work is about trust and attention and change. It is about showing up to help people become who they seek to become. So one of the things that has happened at some of the best events I've been to is cancel 3 of the most mediocre speakers and use that time instead to put people on teams of 8 and give them an actual problem to solve in 1 hour as a group. And there's going to be grumbling and confusion, and then it's going to transform the people in the room. Right? And we get to do things like that again and again. Number 2 from the book. Choose your customers, choose your future. If you own a bakery and you specialize in making wedding cakes for brides who at the last minute want something on a budget but are very demanding, that is how you will spend your days, with people like that. It's up to you, right? That there are great restaurants in this town. And there are some of them run by people I know, friends of mine. If you're a difficult customer, they will say, thank you so much for your patronage. We're not going to be able to seat you again because this place isn't what you need. Here are some phone numbers for other restaurants you can call. Because when you pick your customers, you pick your future. Who is hiring you to run events? Are they ones that are demanding mediocre work from you on a sharp budget? You don't have to work with them. Because every time you're working with them is time you're not working with someone who will challenge you to become the future of this industry. Strategy is easy to describe and hard to stick with. We are not looking for an elevator pitch. The problem with an elevator pitch is no one ever bought anything on an elevator. What we're looking for is a very clear statement of who you are, the change you seek to make, and who you're going to make it with and for. 2 more. Systems fight to defend the status quo. Culture was invented by systems so that systems could stick around. And any system that's been around for a long time is good at sticking around. But you will not get to where you want to go if you just go along. In one of the word clouds you put together, budget and burnout kept showing up. They are related. Burnout is working very hard to get something you're not getting with resources you don't have. No one gets burnout from lunch. We eat it every single day, but you don't get burned out from that because you're not struggling against something that you can't change. So we need to think very hard about what it is we are taking on. Don't try to start logs too big for the amount of kindling you have. Figure out what your resources are. Don't run out of time, don't run out of money, but do something that scares you. Do something that pushes to an edge that makes a change happen. And the last idea happens right out the window, right there. You can see it. I live 13 miles from here, up the Hudson River. On a good day, I'll be on my canoe. You can wave to me as I paddle by. The Hudson River, even out this window, looks a lot like a lake. Doesn't look like the ocean. It's actually a fjord, a tidal estuary. It goes 12 hours this direction and 12 hours this way. It has a current. The difference between a lake and a river is really simple. They may look the same from the outside, but if you're in a boat or you're swimming, you can feel the current. And the current of this industry, from the day I entered it, the first conference I went to, I was probably 12, 1972, until COVID, the current flowed in exactly one direction. And the 1,000 conferences I gave a talk at started to meld together because it was going in one direction. And now, thanks to the internet, thanks to COVID, thanks to work from home, thanks to the fact that we can contact anyone in the world anytime we want if they want to hear from us, information isn't the business you are in. You're in a different business. Where is the current? If you're going to fight a current, fight it on purpose. But realize it's not a lake where you can go any direction you want. Something is happening here. It is shifting. And you can lead the shift, and then you will not feel burnout. You can lead the shift, and budget will not be an issue. Or you can ignore it or try to fight it and just be a cog in the system. So the last story I'm going to tell you, and then I'd love it if Rafat would come on and chat for a minute. One of the best conferences I ever went to was a secret conference in New Mexico. There were about 120 of us. There were playwrights and authors and billionaires and entrepreneurs there. I got to bring my family. And one of the reasons we went is that Neil Armstrong was going to be there. I think it was his last appearance. And it was last night. It was about 4 degrees Celsius. They give us blankets, and they bring us out on this mesa. It's freezing cold. And there's a billion stars out there, and there's a campfire. And we all sit around the campfire. And Neil comes out to tell us the story of the Apollo 11 mission. I'm pretty sure there was some advanced planning involved, because as he's talking, the biggest full moon I've ever seen starts rising over his shoulder. And he stops, and he turns, and he says, "I've been there." I choke up every time I think about this. Spending a couple of days with Neil was very special. And the thing is, NASA sent people into space and brought them back safely when the sum computing power of the institution was the same as the phone in your pocket. The next time this feels too frustrating, or you think you're an imposter or you're not qualified, go outside and look up and realize there are footprints on the moon. That it is possible to change 10 lives, 50 lives, 100 lives. People like you have changed my life over and over again by running a meeting that was worth going to, by creating the conditions for things to change. My friend Shalene has this great expression, which I'll share with you, and then I'll stop talking. There's no question you're going to succeed. All of you have already succeeded beyond almost any measure compared to billions of people around the earth. Not the issue. The question I'll leave you with is this: will you choose to matter? Will you be the voice in the room that says, no, we can push this one. We can make this one special? I know you will. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir. Come sit here. Thank you, Seth. That was great.
Thanks.
And I don't know if you noticed, he's also wearing the yellow glasses, so he's on brand totally for...
I only work with companies that are yellow, because I only have these glasses.
These glasses. Well, thank you. That was very inspiring. I want to recount an anecdote. So this is the first time I'm meeting you this morning. I remember I was a young journalist covering the internet economy back in the days, and I remember your stint at Yahoo back when Yahoo mattered as well. So can we bring up the slide? So this is December 2002. I'm in my late 20s. I'm living in London. I just moved from New York to London. New York chewed me out and then spit me out. And then I went to London. And I was trying to figure out what to do in life. Should I get a job? I was a young journalist. And wanted to start my own, this is 2002, so blogs had started. I had my own blog. Wasn't sure if I want to get into it full time or should I apply for jobs in London. I almost got a job at Mining Magazine, I think like third round in, and I'm glad that they said no after that. But that would have been my career. I would have done whatever, Skift Mining Forum now. So Seth wrote this succinct, which is his specialty, distill wisdom into a short paragraph in Fast Company, which I was in East London, read this, and basically sat up, if I remember this right, and says, the headline was quit your job, and that this is the best year, and he meant 2003 is the best year to quit your job, or any year will be the best year to quit your job, and you'll be the happiest you've ever been. And you notice if people who quit their jobs and start their own things never go back to taking the regular jobs, or if they do, they come back to starting their own thing again. So lo and behold, 22 years later, 2024, I get to say thank you to you.
You're gonna like, you want your money back for the Fast Company?
But thank you. I really tried to search online on Fast Company if like this is archived somewhere. I could not find it.
I'll send you the link.
But somehow I kept this text with me all these years.
Love that.
And so you inspired me to jump in full time into my first company, and then obviously second company and this. So I wanted to just say thank you officially to you.
That's fantastic.
This book that you're coming out, your team was nice enough to send me a copy of it. And you mentioned, as you mentioned here as well, I remember in the first, like literally early on, is to tackle big problems in small chunks. Is that how you?
To create the conditions, right? So how did we end up with 5 billion people using email? Someone built a protocol that 40 people could use, but they made it contagious. They made it sticky, and it gradually got. So it's small steps in the sense that we're trying to build a culture. What are things like around here? And building a culture is something we can do on purpose. I used to, it's my 44th summer teaching canoeing up in Canada. Used to run a summer camp there. When you get 200 kids in the North Woods of Canada, and you can make up the rules and the language and the way people interact, 2 months after they get there, they are transformed. If you try to do it in one day, it doesn't work. That's the magic we're talking about with meetings and conferences, is you create a magical world with its own rules and its own timeline, and then it goes away, but it can stick around.
Yeah, one of the things you said on stage, which is the 365-day touch point with the consumer or with your audience. One of the interesting things that happened over the years, and this I'm talking is conference companies, the large publicly owned companies, they over the years sold off all their media assets because they didn't make money and they only wanted trade shows and conferences. COVID hit and they realized, well, we need a 365-day touch point strategy. They said, well, you had it. Yeah. Then you sold it. And now you realize when you can't meet in person, you need to figure out how to be in touch with the people. So it's interesting that you say that, which is have a understanding, and us as a media company obviously has that touch point, and then we gather in these types of gatherings for the year. And then this becomes the biggest live experience of the Skift brand, and also for our team as a remote company. So one of the things I want to talk, so in a remote world, and certainly the world is not fully remote, but it's a lot more remote than it used to be. It's a lot more possible for people to work part-time at least in these different places. What roles do you think meetings, internal as well as external meetings, have in this world today?
So I want to extend the way you're seeing the pie, right? A media company is fine, but what do we need? We need connection, we need a job, we need a mission, we need a vision. Who determines it for an industry? So when my friend Michael Cater started Publisher's Lunch, an email newsletter, it ended up transforming publishing because it wasn't just an email newsletter, it had an agenda.
Right.
So you could run a job board. You could, like Joel Spolsky, establish the standards for who gets to advertise on the job board, which would change what the jobs are like. So Joel had a very popular blog for programmers, the best programmers. And if you wanted to advertise on his job board, you couldn't have cubicles for programmers. They had to have an office. And as a result, companies, big, important tech companies, shifted the way they laid out their office because one guy's blog had a job, et cetera. So when we look at the people in this room, this is the only chance the people in this room are ever going to sit with each other in person. What are you going to build for them over the next 365 days that's more than just, here's a blog post, that makes it so that coming back next year is essential? Bringing someone with them, this is the place. And meetings are so supercharged in that sense, and we have been wasting it. And that is what I think the opportunity is. Like, so many great things have happened to me in the green room. Yesterday I was in the green room at the Welcome Conference, and there's a special sort of intimacy there. Why isn't the whole conference nothing but green room, right? Because that's the only part I want to sit in, and it's the part most people want to sit in. So that's the opportunity we have, is to strip away the stuff that's actually expensive and time-consuming and put all the golden stuff right there, and then extend it with the digital.
There are a couple of trends that we talk about quite a bit in the meetings industry. One is the festivalization of meetings. You talked to a few festivals on stage as you were talking. And then experiential, which is sort of both are in the same bucket, if you will.
Yep.
How much should we care about festivalizing our meetings or experiential versus, as you said, distilling it enough such that people just want to sit in the green room and it's just people versus
Well,
people?
I think they're sort of the same thing. So there's a pizza place that's not very good about 60 blocks from here. And there's always a line out the door. And there's like, I feel terrible for the pizza places a block away, which are much better. But that is celebrity pizza.
That's because of Instagram, probably.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Everyone who buys clothes goes to the store already wearing clothes. Everyone who goes to a restaurant has food at home. We're not trying to solve that problem. It's just an artifact of the problem we're trying to solve. Celebrity pizza is the goal. So you festivalize it, you extravaganze it because you want to make it feel like a celebrity moment. And you need confidence to do that. The confidence of saying, if I make this my practice to incrementally create tension so that people walk and say, something's happening here, that's my job.
So you mentioned tension on stage as well, and now, just now. By tension, do you mean opposing forces?
No, I mean, if I say, knock, knock, and you say,
who's there?
And then I say,
that's tension.
That's tension, right? The tension of this might not work. The tension of what's going to happen now. The tension of, I'm not sure I belong here. Oh, yes, I do. The tension of, will they catch the fifth club when they're juggling? These are moments of tension.
Anticipation?
Anticipation and fear in equal measure, right? We're trying to create safe appearance of fear, not actual fear, but exposing ourselves to things that might not work and then releasing that over and over, back and forth. Don't steal the revelation. Don't give them the punchline. Just knock, knock. And then there's the pause before the who's there.
Well, that's your art because you know how to.
It's not an art. It's a skill. I practiced it.
Practice it. Well, speaking of that, thank you, Seth. This was great. This is a great opening to our meetings forum.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Go make a ruckus, everybody. Thank you.